Welcome to the Prospect Warehouse podcast. This is your host, Tim Kanak. You can find me on X at Fantasy Aceball. And today, Milwaukee Brewers brought in number one Brewers fan, Matt Morris, the other side of the Dynasty Dingers. I tried to reunite Dynasty Dingers on this pod. And Doc, I was texting him. I'm like, you got to come back on, man. We got Matt coming. We got to do like a reverse Dynasty Dingers pod here. And he was just like, not possible. I have way too much family in town, so I'm out. So unfortunately, no Doc, so no Dynasty Dingers reunion, but that's okay because I think Matt maybe will be happy to not have to deal with Doc shenanigans on a podcast for once. So you can find Matt on the X at Matt_E_Morris. So check him out on X, Twitter, whatever you go by. What's going on, Matt?
What's going on? Thank you for having me on today. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's been a wild holiday. You know, we just wrapped myself, Doc, a couple other industry guys just wrapped our FYPD in our 30-man salary league. And that was a lot of fun. But Doc and I have also been like pushing our 2 Scout the Stat Line 30-man leagues that we formed last year. And I'll tell you, I don't think we knew what we signed up for when we agreed to commission and co-commission 30-man leagues, especially 2 of them. And he's kind of taking points and I've kind of taken cats. And I spent most of my holiday just approving trades, having conversations with guys on the side about, hey, you need to set a full lineup. As of right now, you have 2 starting major leaguers. And that's kind of been our fantasy holiday. And again, you alluded to it. He's very busy. So it's been on me, which is okay. But I do miss Doc, and it's been a very busy year for both of us. And I'm very excited today to talk Milwaukee Brewers because, yes, this is my home team back in Milwaukee now. For those of you that do know me, I used to be in Vegas. We're really excited to talk a bunch of these guys and got a couple really, really bright pieces, especially coming out of 2025. As I did the prep for this, I was like, wow, they actually performed even better than the last time I checked on them.
Yeah, exactly. This is a fun list. I haven't ranked them all yet, but this is definitely like top 3 org. Maybe number 1. So it's got to be fun to be a fan of a team that's actually good and then also has a good farm, which is pretty rare to have both things. So Brewers really, besides, like losing David Stearns, I don't even know if it matters. They've got so many good things going for them that, how do you feel as a Brewers fan? Do you feel like it's too good to be true, or do you feel like on cloud 9?
No, it's hard because I grew up, I'm 34. I grew up Richie Sexson, Jeremy Burnett, Jeff Jenkins, Ben Sheets, Giovanni Gallardo at the tail end of that. And it was a hard team to love because you just knew you were never going to win. Now, Richie Sexson and Jeremy Burnett, when they'd go, back to back to back, which they did in Arizona once, that was a lot of fun. But we got kind of out of that purgatory that the Pirates have been in. And they're working their way out with the big signings they've made this offseason. So excited for them. But I always feel as though we will be stuck right where we are, winning the first round if we're lucky. Thankfully, this year we did. And then ultimately having to face up against the juggernauts. And the only thing that concerns me about this minor league system is, sure, there's a lot of great bats, but there's not a lot of high-end pitching. Mizorowski, there's still some question marks around him. Freddie's out the door, obviously. Brandon Woodruff, we'll see if he can come back from that thoracic surgery and pitch a full season. So I'm very timid as a Brewer fan to say like, hey, I'm so excited I'm on cloud 9. I'm realistic. I want to see a really fun summer. I want to see a fight in the first round. And I want to eventually see us beat the Dodgers in the playoffs. To me, that is our World Series. To beat the Dodgers coming out of 2018 when we took them 7 games, even over the last couple of years, it's like, that's the team we're trying to beat. To get swept in 2025 was rough, but it was like, look on paper, what was really going to happen here. I do think a couple of these names could make for a more interesting series in a few years here.
Yeah. You know what I want to see? I want to see Cubs fans having to call Wrigley Field American Family Field East because Wrigley West, come on, or whatever they call it. They call it Wrigley West or Wrigley North. What is it they call it?
They call it Wrigley North. So we would,
American Family Field South.
It's hard because the Brewers Cubs rivalry and then the Packers Bears rivalry, like, it's ingrained in us. I would say it's tribalistic when you think about like clashing tribes back in, pre-hunter-gatherer or post-hunter-gatherer, right before agriculturalism started in the Mediterranean, like we hate each other. But yet you can also sit down and have a beer and like talk whatever if there's not a game on. But it's a very toxic rivalry. And I think this year in 2025 with both sports has only continued to grow that rivalry. And I actually think from a sports perspective and a dollar attachment, this is really good for both cities because now the fan bases are traveling, more money's flowing. But I don't know if we'll ever get to Wrigley South. I won't be going to Wrigley, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you don't want to have to go pee in the trough.
Exactly.
Yeah, and drink old. What is it? What is the beer? Old style? Yeah, old style. I've been there once. Number 20, first baseman Blake Burke. So Blake Burke is number 20 on the list here. Interesting player, especially first baseman. A lot of first basemen kind of get cornered into the quadruple A type role. But you can see on the F scores, 98 power, 104 hit, 97 discipline, 96 speed. You really want more power than that from a first baseman. 16 homers, that's solid over 600 plate appearances, but it's not great. But you do love a 300 batting average and a 136 extra base hit plus. So it means he's hitting into doubles. So he's a big boy. Like you think that there's some more power here, but like there was a time where there was like Billy Butler, right? Like we thought Billy Butler was going to get into power too, but that guy, he never developed power. He just became like a high batting average, big first baseman. Is that Blake Burke? And I'm not, that might be a weird, one of those mental tricks because Billy Butler is a BB and Blake Burke is a BB initials wise. So I don't know if that's like a mind trick on myself comparing those two guys, but like, what do you think about Blake Burke here as a Brewers fan?
It's fascinating. I think everything you said is correct. The only piece that I just don't know what to think of his profile is started the year at high A, 95 games, 5 home runs. Okay. No power. We could put a few slap hitters into that category, but gets promoted to double A in 37 games, has 11 home runs and hits 300 with a 377. I mean, what changed? I don't know. I haven't been watching Biloxi this year and I didn't keep up with the Timber Rattlers. But that's really encouraging for me coming now into 2026. It's like, was it an adjustment? Did it click? Double A for me, and we'll talk about this through a number of these players, is really like that's where you prove from a former collegiate hitter perspective, okay, I have made the transition. So I think there is more power here. I think it's probably major league 20 home run power. But the 11 home runs in 37 games is room to be excited. I think a number of these guys are buy low category for the Brewers, and I would be buying Blake because I do think that's enough for me to say, hey, there's something to get excited about. And the last piece I'll bring up is Abimelec Ortiz. He's been an up and down prospect over the last couple of years. The power kind of zapped a little bit over a couple months. Average fell. All of a sudden he seems to be back in the graces because some of the numbers upticked again. I think there may be a trend here where you could get really good value buying now and even selling him maybe in May or June of 2026, having more asset return than you give up for him today.
Yeah, that makes sense. So he did have 20 home runs in college, but as Doc likes to say, metal bats, doesn't matter. So but yeah, I like Blake Burke. I think is double A as a 22-year-old straight out of college. That's pretty interesting. He's at least working his way up. And I think that there's a major league caliber player here, which is very rare for number 20 in these system rankings. So again, just that's how good the Brewers system is that if your number 20 guy can be a potential major leaguer, pretty interesting. Number 19 is Coleman Crow. And this guy has been on 3 teams already in his minor league career, which is crazy. I started with the Angels, went over to the Mets, and then now with the Brewers. And he was actually like kind of interesting, like really good with the Angels. Mets acquired him, then he got hurt, and then he actually had a really nice season this year. Coleman Crow with the Brewers, like kind of out of nowhere because he was like not really a prospect. But pretty interesting dude. And I tried to find video of him because I was going to throw some video up of him. But all the video Matt, was from like 3 and 4 years ago. It was all when he was with the Mets or the Angels. Like, I could not find any Brewers video of him whatsoever. And I'm like, what is going on here? I mean, like, yeah, he's only 6 foot, but look at these F scores: 111 stuff, 120 control, 114 FERA. All of those are excellent. We have even pitch level data here because he made it up to where we get pitch level data. AAA is not a lot, 130 pitches. So I think he made 2 appearances there, probably his last 2 starts of the season or something like that, before he looks like he got hurt. So it might have got dinged again here. But a 2.32 JA ERA, really good F scores. Where are you on Coleman Crow?
Yeah, I mean, when we think about especially pitchers, right? We've seen the Jobs and the Painters and the Skeens and these 21, 22-year-olds come up and have a lot of excitement. But I've always wanted to target the guys that are kind of 24, 25, making their debuts, still moderately struggling a little bit. Think back to Corbin Burns when he came up in Milwaukee. There was a really bad second season. I want to say his ERA at the major league level was around 7. And it takes time to develop for people at different stages. I think Coleman Crow still needs development. That short stint in AAA, the numbers look bad. Again, short stint. You can't put anything into that. But on the course of the season, pitched well. Now, he is 24, I think going on to 25 in 2026. And age to level matters for me, but also I'm very mindful that pitchers develop at different times. I think he's going to have an opportunity in the Milwaukee organization to at least be a really strong bullpen candidate or a trade piece, which a number of these guys could be. But I mean, the numbers you're putting on screen line up to what we knew as fans when he was acquired, which was he was going to be a control guy. The question for me is, how does that translate if there's not an opportunity in the starting rotation to the bullpen? Can we see that that stuff play up even more so? Because that's what you really want to provide value for fantasy, and that's ultimately what these players want to provide value for their careers, right? They want to be sought after. So I think, at 19, that kind of just shows you that, hey, it could go either way. But Crow, again, another buy low guy. Like, I don't know many fantasy managers that are looking at him as, hey, he's going to be my future SP3 in a 30-man. He is meant to be depth in big, deeper leagues. And you can probably add him with the idea, hey, his underlying numbers look really good. It's more or less, does he have the opportunity at the major league level? And does he then develop and capitalize on that? Crow's body stature, I don't love. The 6 foot guys, just something about me that brings extra concern. And we'll talk about that with Logan Henderson later on. But I do like to monitor that. I like to keep body as a very key piece when I'm stacking organizational depth in fantasy. If I have, 20 out of 30 of my guys are all lower stature, in my opinion, I am taking on a little bit more risk because the arms may not have as much to hold up to. It's just, again, personal perspective.
Yeah, for sure. A couple notes on Coleman Crow before we move to the next player here. You can see, interestingly, in his AAA stint, he threw his curveball as his primary pitch. That curveball, 27.3% swinging strike rate, is outrageously good. And he's throwing that for a strike 61% of the time. That's insane command of a breaking pitch. And this breaking pitch is an over 3,000 RPM curveball. So really nice curveball. The cutter might be better than the fastball. See, the cutter has a much higher swinging strike rate, and he's throwing the cutter for strikes 60% of the time. His four-seamer, only 30%. Again, this is a small sample size. It's only 2 starts, but it kind of goes fold and fold with what we've heard about him in the past. And another nugget to move on before we move on from Crow is that he was added to the 40-man. They didn't let him get to the Rule 5 draft. They added him to the 40-man. That, despite like an elbow injury, I'm not sure what kind of elbow injury. It can't be too serious if they're taking the roster hit to add him to the 40-man. They're not. If it was like Tommy John, they probably would have just let him go to the Rule 5. So I think that probably tells us that he's going to be healthy going into next year, and that they see him as maybe like number 6, number 7 in the rotation, or it's like some sort of late inning, or like like long inning reliever or something at some point for next year. Otherwise, you're not going to add that to the 40-man. So
yeah, I
number
agree.
18.
Wanted to jump in. I agree with you. Like, if Freddie gets traded, if Brandon Woodruff gets hurt, it's pitchers. They get injured. Like, the Brewers have a backlog of guys ready to go, but that backlog dries up real quick once injuries happen. And that's where I think Crow could jump in. And lastly, they get the most out of their starters. They know pitch sequence to an absolute art. They'll minimize his damage as he is growing at the major league level. because of the organization.
Yeah, exactly. So number 18 here is Casey Hunt. Casey Hunt is a fastball, slider, cutter, curve, changeup repertoire. There's a lot of pitches. Used to be in my top 150. So, and I think you texted me how the mighty have fallen or something like that when we saw Casey Hunt here. His F scores are still okay, but that's because the F scores are a 2-year thing. So you have a 102 stuff, 109 control, 102 FERA. I was really, really digging him going into this season. 2024 was phenomenal. And I'm going to use the slider here so we can see the difference. His 2024, he had a 189 JAERA and a 28.4 K minus walk rate. Now 2025 is the other side of the coin here. We have a 344 JAERA, which actually is not that bad. And then a 15.9 K minus walk, which also, again, is not that bad. It actually looks like when we look at the game log here, he finished the season very strong. He got off to a bit of a rough start here, but actually, let's, for fun here, take August 9th, which gives us a good final month. So his final month of the season, he had a 22% K minus walk rate through 7 starts. So he actually did finish pretty strong. So, that's actually good news. And he's in AA this year, Matt, I want to say, for Casey
I'm assuming,
Hunt?
yeah, so 2025 was all AA. I'm assuming he'll start AAA 2026, just an assumption.
Okay, so based off of this finish that we're looking at here, how do you feel about him going into next year? Do you think I have him too low in my rankings, or do you think I have him in an appropriate spot based on kind of how bad his first half of the year was?
Yeah, I think you have him right where he needs to be, because he could jump. He could be he could be 8, 7, 8 middle of the season here, right? Depending on but especially Batonti when we talk about him. And then Letson, Letson's raw and young, but it all depends if he can go to AAA and if he can put up a sub 3.5 ERA and really get that strikeout back over. I know Eric Cross loves the strikeouts per 9. Appreciate you, Eric, but I still lean on that a little bit, because I look at it for starters, and especially guys that don't have dominating stuff. You look back at 2024, that was 12.3 strikeouts per 9. 2025 was right at 9. That needs to be floating above 10, in my opinion, for him at 25 years old, age to level, to really have a chance to break through with the big league club. And you said it, the last 6-7 games of his season were good. We don't know what these players go through on a year-to-year basis. Look at Xavier Isaac and the interesting information that came out about him. Like, stuff happens, life happens. But at this age, 2026 is kind of like the last year for us prospectors to really say, okay, there's some shine left. I think he's a great buy low, because from where he was to where he is, you're automatically recouping assets there. And there is still a chance that he could wind up in the Coleman Crow basket of who the Brewers turn to when depth starts to dwindle. We'll see. 2026 is a big year for him. AAA. I do think there's absolute opportunity for him to get back closer to his 2024 numbers, but I don't really see anything more than an SP5 at the major league organization level here, unless he continues to develop. My question is, how much development is left?
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's get to, and it's funny because you said, oh, there's not a lot of pitching here. Hey, we're going to hit like a bunch of pitchers right off the bat. Number 17 is Ethan Dorchies. He was a 10th round pick from 2024. And this is like one of these lovely pop-up prospects, just like Casey's Hunt. 6'5", 215 pounds out of high school. And probably the reason he fell so far in the draft is that his velocity was only like low 90s. He's still kind of mostly low 90s on the fastball. But at 6'5", he's getting a ton of extension. And one of the things is he already has 5 pitches. So like a lot of these younger guys out of high school, when they were first picked, they might have like 2-3 pitches. They might have 2 good pitches and then one that they're like kind of working on. But he has 5 pitches that actually are like semi-decent. And yeah, of course, you would like to see more velocity. But this is the thing that I see about Dorchies is that he is only 19 years old. He has plenty of time to add velocity. It's not like who is maxed out on their velocity at the age of 19? Very, very few people. Probably only the guys who blow their arm out at 19 and never fully recover are the guys that max out at 19. So Ethan Dorchies is a very interesting name. And I want to see, like, out of these pitchers, do you think I have these guys all in the appropriate order thus far?
Okay, I think that's a great question because I would take Thompson 15, Dorchies 16, Harden 17, and only knocking Harden because, again, age to level. We haven't seen Thompson at the professional ranks, but coming out of Vanderbilt, second round pick, love that. Dorchies is really exciting. I think everything you said is accurate. And I think what's interesting too, when we look at these pitchers, the Brewers clearly have an organizational target. Take Mizorowski out of the equation. They like guys that can control the ball, have great stuff that they can shape and maneuver and execute properly with, through the minor leagues and as it gets to the major leagues. But Milwaukee steers away from the 97, 98 mile an hour throwers. I don't know if that's because automatically there's assumption that control is weaker with those guys. If injury is higher, which we do know, you said that. But when I reference that there's not top tier rotational like prospect talent, I think these guys can grow into that. And I think Dorchies could grow into a solid SP3 projectable at the major league level, maybe even an SP2, depending on how that development goes. The fastball does need to tick up. But again, 19 years old, if I'm correct, a lot of time to develop him.
Yes. You already mentioned our next guy here. I love this guy, JD Thompson. I love him so much that I picked him in the 30-team league that you mentioned
Where
earlier.
did you get him?
I got him in the last round. I got him in round 6. That was an
That's
absolute steal, man. This guy is so good, and he just gets dinged because he's short. So he's 6 foot, 100. He's listed at 6 foot, 199, which means he's probably more like 5'10 or 5'11 or something like that. But he's an absolute stud. He had a 24.2 K minus walk rate in college, less than 8% walk rate, 121 whip. I'm a huge JD Thompson fan. He's got a mid-90s fastball. He's got a really good slider, curve changeup. This is just he's your next Logan Henderson you're looking at here. So I'm going to I love him so much, I'm going to throw some video up as you talk about JD Thompson out of Vanderbilt. And also Vanderbilt pitcher, how do you sleep on Vanderbilt pitchers at this point in time? Like Tennessee and Vanderbilt just continue to pump out so many good players, and Wake Forest, don't sleep on those players. Those programs are elite. They're better than they're better than many minor league development systems, I would say, at this point.
Yeah, and I think what's really important here is the left-handedness. And I know that sounds crazy, but when we look at the Brewers organization, Gasser is up now. And with the number of arms that we've talked about.
Look, he just struck out Rock. Look at that.
I mean, if you can strike out the presumed 1-1, you're in a good position. I think I also just enjoy the fact that when you think about collegiate arms, you have to also think about, as you mentioned, the program they're coming from and the development path they were on. How does that development path that they were on line up with the development path that they will then be on? Right? We know the Brewers, the Guardians, a number of organizations right now have pitching labs. They utilize those labs well. It's going to be a very easy transition for JD Thompson as he enters an organization that does things very similarly with metrics and focuses on spin. The body type for a lefty for me doesn't as much concern me because I think traditionally we're looking at more of a craft. Take Skubal out of the equation, take Crochet out of the equation, right? Those guys are absolute studs. They throw high velocity. I don't think we should be looking for that from Thompson. I think we should be looking for him to fall into what Milwaukee does well, and that is getting him to execute his pitches at a high level. What I don't know of Thompson is in college what his ground ball rate was, but I'm guessing it was higher than most left-handed pitchers.
Yeah, it had to have I mean, he had a 4 ERA, but it's SEC metal bats. It's like it doesn't really, matter at that point.
Strikeouts were still good. Whip was okay. Second round pick, and this is what you did in again from a fantasy perspective here. I absolutely love in deep leagues, 20 or 30 manager leagues, hammering these guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. If you can get a couple of these collegiate guys into your organization, you're likely to have them have good returns early in pro ball. That means you can trade them again for a higher asset. And if you're lucky, you land on a guy that comes out and absolutely just knocks the door down and you hold on to him. But I think he will grow fast in this organization, and I wouldn't be surprised for him to be a top 10 prospect for the Brewers mid-season, maybe June.
Yeah, this FYPD was sick for pitching talent. I tell people, and I love the pitchers at the top, but I tell people all the time when they ask me for advice, I recommend trying to get a hitter in the first round because the pitchers for the whole rest of the draft, the college pitchers, are absolutely fun. Even the high school pitchers, there are tons of good pitchers out of this draft class. Number 15 is Tyson Hardin So Tyson Hardin is like a phenomenal command guy. I'm going to throw his F scores up right here. He's got a 99 stuff, 120 F control, 105 FERA. So you can see here 4.2% walk rate over 2024 and 2025. So because he was drafted in 2024, so his entire minor leagues, he has a 4.2% walk rate. Is absolutely ridiculous through the whole thing. So I'm a big Harden fan, I think, because like his stuff isn't as good as Thompson's, but the reason I have him ranked higher is proximity. He was in AA this year, so there's a good chance maybe he pitches a month in AA and then comes up to AAA. But he's gonna be 24 next year. He's close to the majors, and this type of high command guy is the type of that guy that has a really neat transition into the majors and could just be kind of like a sneaky, really good back end starter for you. Like he could be your next Parker Messick completely different pitcher, righty versus lefty, whatever. But like, that type of guy who's like going to pitch to a low whip, command his pitches, might not be the sexiest for strikeouts, but he's going to get the job done and he's not going to kill you along the way. I think Harden's an interesting guy for those types of reasons. Maybe he's a Jose Soriano or just one of these really underrated, like ranked 60 to 80 pitchers or whatever that you get in fantasy that is like right between the cliff where it's like, okay, once you walk off this cliff, you're going to get extreme volatility of maybe you get a ton of strikeouts, but they could also get, throw up a 5 ERA for you.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, I think there's another name we're going to talk about here in a little bit that I actually have in my notes kind of similarly, which is when we think about Roto, and I'll use Roto as the example here because, you're really playing against that volatility. And, you have your minor leagues, 20 to 30 manager leagues again. I think he's an interesting one. If I'm in a 15-man league, I'm probably not rostering him, just in all honesty. But I don't play in a lot of 15-man leagues. I play in a lot of 20 or 30s. And what I like to do with my minor league guys is I like to have 2 or 3. Is it Braden Clark or Brandon Clark, Tim?
Yeah, Brandon Clark.
Brandon Clark. I like to have 2 or 3 of those guys who could be the next Randy Johnson or might be working at Chick-fil-A. We don't know yet. And then I like to stack hey, they're likely going to be major leaguers. They're likely going to not hurt my ratios. They're likely going to be set them, forget them. I'm good. They're going to get me my innings. They're going to get me my strikeouts. I will find a way to navigate around that because at least if I have major leaguers and deeper leagues and my minor leagues in waiting, I have assets yet again. And I think this is absolutely SP5 for the Milwaukee Brewers, a guy that rotates in and out of the rotation based off injuries because he's going to limit the damage. And that's what the organization is looking for. They're looking to execute game plans. And he fits in line with that. Now, the question on all of the guys that have his profile is, well, does it actually work at the major league level? The numbers look good so far. We don't know yet. We need to see what he does in AAA. We need to see what he does at the pro level. Well, I don't think there's necessarily a reliever here. I do think there is a major league starter for organizations. Does he stay with the Brewers? Not sure. But that control, again, right in line with what the organization likes, that should get him an opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Number 14 here is Josh Adamczewski, who's probably a top 10 prospect in like almost every organization, but Brewers are so deep that here he is in number 14. And so I'm going to pull his F scores up because they're all really good. Because I already know that people are going to give me flack for having this guy at 14, but I'll tell you, he's getting right now a lot of helium from Arizona Fall League. All the Arizona Fall League guys are going to catch a lot of helium. But there's just a lot in this system that I like. So it's not like I don't like him. It's just that I think that there are better players for fantasy upside than Adamczewski because I'm not really sure on the power speed of really like where he gets ultimately. Even though for F score reasons, we have here 118 power, 103 hit, 108 discipline, 99 speed. That's interesting. A 118 power for a guy of this build. I don't know really how much power he's going to get into. We can see A-ball. He completely demolished A-ball. Over 1,000 OPS, 5 bombs, 150 extra base hit plus. High A, a bit of a struggle bus, right? But I mean, yeah, he was young for the level. He was transitioning levels at 20 years old. I know he lit up the fall league, but that's Arizona where there's no good pitchers and you've got altitude on your side. So I'm just not really sure what to expect from him from a power standpoint. Like, I think he's going to have a really good hit tool plate approach, but I'm just not sure power speed, like what he ultimately turns into. What do you What do you think about Adamczewski? Like, how high are you on him? Would he be top 10 Brewers for you?
It's so hard because, I mean, 4 home runs in 20 games in the AFL means, to me, it means nothing. You said it right. Like, Keston Kjerstad also went out there and looked like Barry Bonds, and now Kjerstad's fighting for playing time. Jose Brusino, I think, was 2024's MVP. We know he had raw power, but he went out and put up great numbers. But I reference this because in 71 games in 2025, he had 5 home runs. So he had 4 home runs in less time, significantly. The power, for me, it may develop. He might be a 10, 12, maybe 15 home run guy at the major league level. For him to provide value, it has to come from the gap power. You have to allow that on-base percentage, which we saw in 2025 at 420 across all levels, hit around 370, 380 at the major league level. Like, there's opportunity here for him to be a second baseman of a pro team. The power has to tick up a little bit more, but he's got to continue the skill set he has. And then from a speeds perspective, you're not talking about a Luis Castillo here, right? I mean, 15 stolen bases in his minor league career over 3 seasons. Like, he is absolutely a hit tool guy. I'm fascinated to see your F scores with the power numbers that it has on there. Is it also including AFL, or is it just minor league campaigns?
No, that's only minor league campaigns. So that's not going to include AFL. And a big part of what goes into this is exit velocities, which we don't have for him
Okay.
because the Brewers play in Arizona. They don't play in Florida. So we don't get Florida State League data when they're in A-ball. And then we don't get any real exit velocities until he's in AAA. So we don't have exit velocity. So what this is going to take into effect is going to take into effect angles, and it's going to take into effect like literal power numbers, like how many extra base hits and stuff like that he's getting. So it will take into effect though angles. So like home run, fly ball rates matter. So does line drive rates. Like, we don't want guys hitting the ball on the ground. If you hit the ball on the ground too much, it's going to ding you in that power F score. So it means he is at least getting into good angles, because we do have angles data, but we just don't have exit velocities. And you can see in the video that he's not like the biggest dude, right? Like, I'm not saying he's not like, he's in terrible shape or something. Like, he's in good shape, but he's like, a smaller middle infield type. Like, you don't expect massive power from him. And 118 is like really like a corner type power profile that you usually see in the F score. So I don't really know how much to actually believe that. So to me, like, kind of seems like a 18-10 guy or something like that. And just, for fantasy, that can be valuable in deeper leagues, but in your shallower leagues, that's not the most valuable. And so there's just other guys on this list that I think are going to be more valuable in more leagues, hence the ranking.
I agree with you. And I think context too. Let's project 2029 here. Jesus Mate, Pena, Churio, Contreras, or Quero. Like, it's going to be a good lineup. His job is probably going to be more of a facilitator than it is a guy that's really going to put up the damage numbers. Now, the runs may be great because of this lineup. Will the RBIs? I doubt it. He would be a perfect, 2-bat in a lineup. And also then rolls in, does Bryce Terang get extended? There's a lot of pieces of this, but I like what I've seen a lot. I think the problem I have with him in correlation to fantasy is the people that own him also like him a lot, because they know that we're on the verge of a really, really, really good prospect or a major league utility player potentially. And so that automatically makes the cost of him currently higher than what I'm willing to go and pay for, because there's not that one skill for fantasy screaming at me: power, speed, right? Contact just seems to be the lowest ranked overall skill, but the OBP is great. That might be the skill that everybody like clamors to.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's a very good argument to rank him ahead of Brock Wilken and Braylon Payne, because he's much safer than them from a profile perspective. So if someone did that, I wouldn't hate it. I guess I'm more just like sometimes it depends on if you're shooting for the stars, right? Like, what do you want? Because like, he doesn't have 30 plus homer potential like Brock Wilken, I don't think so. Like, what are you going for? But like, if someone wanted to put him ahead of those guys, like, I'd be like, okay, that's cool. Like, don't see anything wrong with that. It's a good system. So number 13, lucky number 13 is Marco Dinges. So yes, catcher at 13. And I think it's well worth it, because he has shown a lot of power from the catching side here. So throwing his F scores up, a 115 power, 100 hit tool, 107 discipline, 90 speed. So really good hitter here. 136 age adjusted WRC plus. He is 22, was in high A, so we don't have much of an adjustment there. It's actually a downward adjustment, slightly. So, or at least it was from his A ball stuff, not from his high A stuff. So that's Dinges. And I think that this dude has more likely potential to get into that power. And then also, I feel like his time horizon is going to play really nicely into when Contreras' contract is set to expire. I don't see the Brewers re-signing Contreras, even though he's like their, kind of face of the franchise. I guess, would you call him face of the franchise? I don't know if you'd call him,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Yelich or what, probably Contreras. Like, I just don't see them re-signing him, especially when you have Dinges and Jeferson Quero in the organization. So, like, between these two guys, I just feel like there's a really good path to playing time based on when he's projected to hit the majors. And I think there's a decent amount of power here. Like, yeah, the contact tool sucked at high A. It dropped from 80% at A ball to 67% at high A. But I think that could kind of bounce back up some once he adjusts to the level. So will we see him in high A or double A next year? Probably double A, I would guess. But what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think everything you said is on point. That's kind of what I have in my notes, which is I want to see him at double A. I said that earlier, collegiate hitters, I'd like to see their production at double A because that tells me, have they made the transition? Are they actually looking like a major league bat? Some of these guys crush single A, go to high A, crush it, get to double A. Most notable that I can remember, Dylan Cruz, struggle. It's like, oh, what? That wasn't expected. Well, Marco's not necessarily that kind of a prospect coming out of collegiate. I think he went to Florida State, if I'm correct. And Pop's always been there. We like that skill. You said it. I think from everything that we've talked about, really, it just comes down to what you said. Does he end up playing in the Milwaukee organization? And I think it's going to be unique with Contreras because you said it. He is the face of the franchise. I mean, he was this season our leader in Milwaukee. Do you give that up or do you lock that in, put your franchise in a position to ultimately be held back financially when you have two guys that are absolutely capable of taking at least those everyday reps? And I would really like a platoon of Marco and then Quero. It's just, again, what does he do this year in double A? Can he hold back to some of those numbers he put up earlier in 2025? I think so. I do think we have a major league catcher here. The question is starter or backup or, platoon based off what you have in the organization.
Yeah, for sure. Number 12, this is a guy I really like, Luke Adams. First baseman, most likely would be my guess for Luke Adams, but he's big boy, 6'4", 210 pounds. And despite only having a 231 batting average this year and 227 last year, he puts up really good contact rates. And he just, for whatever reason, he runs into like really low BABIPs, but he had like about an 80% contact rate last year, 79% this year. So there's really good contact tools here. Just super interesting how we are not necessarily getting like high averages 2 years in a row from a guy who has good contact. And it's not like he's a lefty. It's not like this is a Max Muncy thing. So I put showing video on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, but and of course, first thing in the video is him getting beamed. So thanks, Fangraphs. So I mean, like you can see, this dude is huge, and he's a righty, and most righties who can run a little bit are not going to run into low BABIPs because he can run a little bit. 10 steals this year, 28 last year. So pretty interesting profile. How much will he run long term? I don't really know. It could be maybe like a Josh Naylor situation where he's running like 8 to 10 steals because he's done it in the past. And then 1 year he just jacks 20 for some reason, like just because he wants to. Will Myers, right? Will Myers wanted to steal 20 the 1 year and he did it. So it's like, I think that Adams obviously in the minors has shown that he can steal some bags. But, when he's in the majors, I don't know how much speed he's actually going to get into, assuming he makes the majors. But based on his contact rates, the power that he's put up, his size, like how well he's performed in the minors, like sure seems like a major league bat to me. Really good plate approach too. So really interesting, fun player. Like runs 16, 17% walk rates, only 20% K rate. So it doesn't strike out a lot. Like really good profile as far as like batted ball stuff. So I'm a fan. Like he's 53% pull rate, 38% fly ball rate, 25% line drive rate, like barely hits the ball on the ground. Like this dude has exactly what you want out of a power hitter when it comes to angles.
Yeah, he is the most fascinating minor leaguer, and I'm biased because I'm a Brewer fan, so I've watched him for a number of years. The swing originally just a few years ago was one of the craziest setups and then mechanical paths through the zone. It looks as though from the video that you're showing that there's been some significant changes in that. When he gets into a ball, his raw power is incredible. I mean, I've seen him hit it 440, 450 to left field. The problem is, as you said, he's just not tapping into that enough. And I don't know if that is the patience in the approach that he has at the plate. I mean, his OBP throughout his minor league career is jaw dropping, but the power numbers with his size and with his raw power just haven't translated. And then you said it, the averages also, they hover around 220, 240 at best. And you just wonder, like, how does that fit into a major league team? Sure, if the OBP hovers around 380 or 400, like that's a player you want in your lineup just from an on-base perspective. But I don't know what to think of Adams. I've never really seen a profile like this with also knowing the body type and the projection that could come from that skill. I've been waiting year after year for his profile to more or less sure up and tell me exactly what he is. He is truly an enigma. That's what I have in my notes. This guy could be a major league all-star. He also could never make it at the major leagues because, in my opinion, he needs to actually become more aggressive, which takes away from his absolute best skill, which is his approach. I'm fascinated to see how that balance works out this year.
Yeah, only a 32% swing rate. That's really, really low. That's very like Lars Nuparian or Emmanuel Rodriguez if you want another prospect comp. So yeah, get the bat off the shoulder more. But you see a 123 discipline. He's not getting caught, looking on strikeouts. So that's the good thing. Unlike Rodriguez, who's running 30% K rates with similar swing rate numbers. So Luke Adams, 158 age-adjusted WRC plus because he was 21 in AA this year. So interesting stuff. Number 11 on the list is going to be the recent draftee, Andrew Fischer. So he was the first-round pick for the Brewers this year. Still not top 10 because the Brewers are so deep, number 11. And this guy is so interesting. Did you know that he played at 3 different colleges? He played at Duke as a freshman, Ole Miss as a sophomore, and Tennessee as a junior. So literally 3 years in college, 3 different colleges, 20 home runs as a sophomore, 25 home runs last year. This dude was a freaking beast. His average was above his BABIP. I love that. I love when I see that. Like Mike Trout is like the only player in the MLB that I would see consistently with like higher batting averages than the BABIP. And it's like, how does that even happen? You just like will that into existence. But he had a short, little small sample size, 311, 402, 446. So I'm not really sure what kind of F scores we're going to get on him. But he was really good in his little sample size here. 70% contact rate, leaves a little bit to desired, but 8 steals and a bomb with a 141 WRC plus. And I know a lot of people are super, super high on Andrew Fischer as kind of like one of these like late FYPD darlings, kind of like me with Dax Kilby. So you as the Brewers fan, like how excited are you on this Andrew Fischer pick?
I love him. And I think I'm biased, not because I'm a Brewer fan, but because I really liked Drew Gilbert coming out of Tennessee. I call it the gamer mentality, right? Just the guy in the field that entertains, that has the momentum of the gameplay and motivates his teammates and is entertaining. And Fisher's more controlled than Drew Gilbert was. Also from a body stature size, larger. But out of everyone in the Milwaukee organization that we've talked about, or we will be talking about, that's not Jesus Mate, I have the most confidence in Fischer being an everyday starter. I think Fischer absolutely has all-star potential if he can really tap into his power mixed with that great contact. The question is, these kids are young. Where do you see them developing? And I threw just a poor data name on him of Tyler Soderstrom. Soderstrom doesn't have the same contact ability, but the body's similar. They're fluid. The swing looks good, and I think there's power there. And I think if you can get a player that would put up Soderstrom numbers in Milwaukee, it would finally solve that first base issue. And yes, I know Andrew Vaughn was nice, but Fischer has everything you're looking for to help lead a team. And I think it's also paired in then with like, what is Wilken? What is Adams? What do they end up becoming? What does Blake Burke become? There's a lot of depth here at that first base position that we're projecting, where Fischer may end up in right field. So I think the body type will allow for that navigation as he continues his development. There was some stolen bases in his profile in the very short sample size he got this year. I don't read too much into that. I think he is a contact power bat who could sit in the middle of the lineup. The question is, again, playing time and who ultimately emerges from this very deep group Milwaukee has in their organization as a starter.
Yeah, I agree with that. Number 10, this is a proximity guy here, Robert Gasser. He's been around, got TJ, is still a prospect, oddly, but here he is. And Gasser is, do you think he's going to break camp in the rotation? Like, to me, especially if they end up trading Freddie, like, is he the number 5 starter? Or is he going to be like kind of built up this year in long relief or in the bullpen or something? Returning from TJ before they try to condition him back into a starter. Like, what route do you see them going? Because I feel like the Brewers, when they get an arm who gets hurt, they're the type that just will automatically transition them into the bullpen. Like, we saw that with like Rasmussen when he was on the Brewers. Like, that's just like their game is like, Hader, okay, you're a reliever now. We're not getting the command we want. Okay, reliever, boom, like that, and they don't move him back. It's not like White Sox with Crochet, right? Like, when the Brewers move you to the pen, you're probably done as a starter until you get traded to the Rays, and then they'll make you a starter again. But what do you think about Gasser? And I like it. I really like his stuff. 5 pitches, good fastball, sinker. Sweeper is his best pitch. But good stuff from Gasser, and we saw it in a small sample size back in 2024. And I think that there could be some cheap, nice shares to be had here of like last round pick, good value, right, for Gasser.
Yeah, I put Gasser right where we put Tyson Harden in a lot of ways. Like, I'm thinking Roto, a guy that can put up numbers, that's safer. I like Gasser for Milwaukee more out of the rotation than I do the bullpen, just because you're not seeing that high end velocity from Gasser. Now, again, what does that come to be if he is transitioned into a relief role? We have seen from Aaron Ashby, well, that velocity has come. Now, there also has been talk around the Milwaukee circuit that Ashby might be the guy that's going, weirdly, from the pen back to the rotation. We can all just assume, it's hearsay at this point. We have Freddie, we have Woodruff, we have Priester, Mizorowski, and then I'm sure I'm missing the 5th there. But they have, when I looked at it, like 6 to 8 reasonable guys that can get time. There's going to be a few injuries throughout the year. So I expect Gasser to at least have 8 to 12 starts in the rotation this year if he doesn't come into the rotation out of camp. But again, depth is important. And I want to see exactly what that depth for him looks like from an organizational plan now that he is back from Tommy John, because in the short sample size he gave us this year, it was still very strong. And before the Tommy John in 2024, he was a guy that came up because of injuries and performed well. His injury getting Tommy John was actually pretty devastating for what the organization needed in 2024.
Yeah. So you can see the F scores 103 stuff, 113 control, 108 FERA, and 6 foot 192. So lefty version almost of Harden. Like, very similar. Next on the list is number 9. It is Bishop Letson. So I'm going to pull his stuff up here. So Letson actually was hurt this year. I don't know what the injury was. Maybe you do, Matt. But really good stuff. Almost a 24% K- walk rate on the season. You see on the F scores 106 stuff, 114 control, 109 FERA. He hits into the top or the high 90s in his fastballs. So hits up to 98 and has multiple fastballs. So 2 fastballs, running 4-seamer, 2-seamer, or sinker if you're John, because John hates the term 2-seamer. Sweeper, changeup, cutter. So that's what he's throwing right now. And fastball, sweeper are his dominant pitches. 6'4", 170 pounds. So I really liked everything I saw from him this year. I am slightly concerned about the injury that he had, because there's minor leagues, it's hard to find injury data, but he did come back from it and pitched well when he came back. He only made a few starts after he came back. It looks like 5 or something like that. Kind of built back up. So it didn't get really back up to high pitch counts, but I like what I saw from him this year. Fastball, slider, sweeper, whatever you want to call it, was pretty sick. And, 6'4", 170 pounds. I don't think he's that skinny. Like, I think that is an incorrect waitlisting on Bishop Letson.
Yeah, I have CBS is saying it was a shoulder injury. But that actually gives me some hope. Maybe it was an impingement. We don't have anything more than shoulder, but if it was labrum or rotator, he would have been done for the year, right? We just know that. Maybe it was labrum and it was something like, hey, it's not a bad tear. I've had labrum surgery, so I kind of understand the extent of labrums. Like most pitchers actually have labrum tears. It's just how bad is it? Is if you end up having to go under the knife. But to miss, roughly 2.5, maybe 3 months here and to come back, I can't think it was really that bad. So that gives me some encouraging signs. And I think out of all of the pitchers in the Brewers organization, this is the one guy that I'm like, hey, there could be SP2 here. There could even be SP1. We just don't know yet, but he has the velocity to come to the major league level and really take a top of the rotation spot if he continues to develop. I like him a lot. I haven't seen enough paired with the injury to really give you a full profile. But again, another guy that I'm like, hey, this is one of those 2 or 3 players, kind of like I mentioned earlier with Clark, that like I might be willing to throw into my dynasty, target as a back top 150, maybe 200 based off who you're talking to, and really hope for a really strong 2026. Where do you have him in your overall rankings? Or if you don't, where do you think he would fall just off the top of your head?
He's top 200, so he's in
Okay.
like the 175 200 range.
Hmm.
But he's right there. I mean, like he was in the list of names when I was rounding out my top 150. He was in that like final grouping of names. So if I had done a top 200 instead of 150, definitely would have been in there.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I watched a little bit of video on him before we jumped on today because I really wanted to see how his stuff was moving. Does it list out him as having a slider or curveball? Did you say it was a sweeper that is his dominant too?
Yeah, it's a sweeper.
Okay,
But it depends on whatever you're looking at is on how it's going to get it classified.
sure.
So yeah.
He has a lot in the few videos that I saw. He had a lot of north and south action, which made me think it was a curveball. And again, he could have multiple different variations here. But what I found was, that off speed pitch really gets on the hitter late. And I really enjoy pitchers that have that ability because for me, it means less times that they're going to leave it for a potential hang. When it gets on the hitter late, I've usually seen that be mislocated where it's a fouled off. And that sounds crazy and it's a silly thing to notice, but when that break happens later, I know that I can trust them to have limited damage as opposed to a guy like Jose Barrios where his ball breaks, almost halfway to the plate and the batter can identify it.
Well, he's got really like what you would almost call the modern arsenal with all these fastballs, since he's
Mhm.
throwing fastball, sinker, and cutter. So he's basically got 3 fastballs, and
Yep.
then the cutter acts as a bridge pitch against his sweeper. See, there's the sweeper right there, which like you
Mhm.
called it a curve, but I mean, like that's the thing. It's like a lot of power curve. Like if you throw a curve over 80 miles an hour nowadays, it's considered
So
a
yeah.
sweeper, basically,
Okay.
just
Okay.
by like whoever's looking at it. And then he's got the changeup. So he's got like this really good arsenal all off the fastball. It's just all variations, basically a fastball with bridge pit and like it's all bridged together. So he's got all his bridge pitches down. So like I feel like his arsenal is kind of locked in, which is kind of rare for a player like this because there's a lot of guys who just throw really hard and then they don't have like a locked in arsenal where it's like you can throw a curve like a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, a really sick curve, and a changeup, and they could be all 60 grade pitches, but then you have nothing bridging any of those pitches together, which is like very important in today's game. So I think it's
Well, and
important that he has all that stuff already.
organizationally as well, Milwaukee, if I'm correct, was top 5 in the league for fastball usage in 2025. And it's easier when you have Mizorowski, Freddie, 2 fastball dominant guys, but I'm pretty sure Priester's cutter was probably included in there as a fastball as well. Like this is an organization that likes to set everything up with that fastball repertoire. And when we talked about a number of these guys, like they're lower throwers in regards to velocity. Whereas Letson really allows Milwaukee to, what you said, like define you as what you are, utilize that skill set and continue to develop you in the path of the organization. He has everything that Milwaukee is requiring him to have to be a really good major league pitcher if he can continue to develop.
Yeah, for sure. Number 8 here, Eric Bitonti. So again, like Letson barely missed my top 150. Wilken and Batonti were also like kind of just off of it. I had Eric Bitonti in like the 180s. Wilken was pretty close too, but both of them did not make it. Batonti is just such an interesting player. Like I just don't like. He's a guy that I'm like, what do I do with this guy? Because I see all the upside there. Like I see the ceiling that's there for him, but he's so volatile. So I just threw his F scores, right? Like 19-year-old, he'll probably play third, even though he's listed as shortstop. I don't see him as a shortstop. 6'4", 218 pounds, 120 power score, 98 hit, 93 discipline, 105 speed. It's like this is not quite Spencer Jones, like levels of bad contact, but 65% contact rate is not good. But then he has a 149 extra base hit plus and 19 home runs. So he's creating a lot of damage despite a bad contact rate and despite a 33% K rate. So none of those things are good. And even on the bases, you see 17 steals, you're going to like that. But he was only successful 63% of the time. So it's like he's making a lot of things happen. And then so it's either like really good or really bad. I feel like his outcomes are just like really good or really bad. And there's like nothing in between. So it kind of makes him interesting. His splits are not good. You can see he's pretty terrible against lefties. 804 OPS against righties, 571 against lefties. So he has to work on hitting lefties. Otherwise, he's going to end up in some sort of platoon here. But Batonti is just a really interesting prospect. Like, how do you feel about him? Because I feel like he has to be in the top 10 just because the upside is so high. But there's also the downside that this guy is not going to be a major leaguer.
Yeah, so I have him kind of classified in prospects with George. I'm going to try to pronounce the name correctly. Wilkow for Chicago. Same issues, right? Immense raw power. Like if you show up and watch a post game home run derby, like these two guys, they're going to put you in wow. The problem is like the strikeout numbers are pretty ridiculous. And Batonti, I think on our list could float anywhere from kind of where you have him all the way to 17, 16, right? Because we've continued to see the contact issues there. Now, again, development happens. With development, you take certain things away. I trust the Milwaukee organization. Out of everyone in the top 10, though, he's probably the one I'm least confident in to ever provide major league value. I think he probably makes the major leagues because of that immense skill set of power. It's just, are you really an everyday starter on a team that has won the division 5 out of the last 6 years, or however you want to look at their playoff structure? Because you already have some risk with Wilken. You know, you already have some other risk around the top prospects that are expected to start. Can the lineup really survive these kind of numbers? Absolutely not over 30% strikeout rate unless you are looking at, high OBP and 40 home run upside. Sure, that is in the profile, but development still needs to be had. I've loved Batonti since they signed him at over slot value a few years ago when they drafted him. The age is still good. I would love to see them add him to the 40 when the requirement comes up in a few years, continue to develop, maybe debut 22, 23, 24 when he's really found his game, but that's a lot of development. You can't miss the upside though. He is so fun to continue to check in throughout the year. I think in fantasy, I might be trying to trade him right now. I would try to gauge his value because he could fall off the value cliff this year in 2026 if things don't improve or if they even get worse as he grows in development through the levels. Or you could have traded him early when he figures it out. That's the scary side.
Yeah, for sure. Next on the list is number 7, Brock Wilken, who we already talked about. Wilken, power beast. Bad batting averages so far, unfortunately, because I think that when he was at Wake Forest, he had a 345 batting average. I mean, metal bat, but like we have not seen those kind of averages. When he first came up his first year after getting drafted, he was throwing up solid averages, but he hasn't been back there. He's been running over 270 or under 270 BABIP since then. But 18 bombs in 79 games. There's just so much power here. This is a 30 to 40 homer bat. It's just like, what are you going to get? Like, if he's hitting under, a 200 or 220 batting average, are the Brewers okay with a righty Max Muncy? Because that's basically what he is walk, strikeout, home run. Like, are you okay with that? Or because the Brewers have so many options, is he not going to get a chance to do that? Because the thing is, yeah, he could hit 35 or 40 homers even if he's hitting 200. But will he get the opportunity in this organization with this many players that can play those positions, right? Like this org has a lot of guys that are first, third, shortstop, whatever, corners. So it's like, what are they going to do? I don't know. Maybe he's traded and it worked, and he's a twin, so it doesn't matter. But like, I just think that there's so much power here. Super interesting guy, barely off the top 150. Got to keep your eye on him though, because 30, 40 home run talent doesn't come out of nowhere. So
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard again with Adams, Batonti, Fischer, Wilken. And I think out of all these guys, Wilken, being a first round pick out of Wake was the first, really shot the Brewers took with some of their draft picks. You can see it over the last number of years. Take Braylon Payne out of the equation. They've been going for power in the first 3 rounds. Even Blake Burke as well. And now they have this plethora where it's kind of like, all right, race to see who wins the job. And I love Wilkins' OBP. We've talked at length about him getting hit in the face by a pitch, I think 2024, if I'm correct. That messes you up. It does. But he's got to get the average above 250 to not be Rhys Hoskins. Like, as a Brewer fan, watching Rhys Hoskins over the last 2 years, like, again, on a winning team that's trying to make timely hits, move runners over, hit the ball to the opposite field, side of the diamond to progress the game, he doesn't fit into the approach the Brewers are using as their foundation for success. That concerns me. Now, I still like the bat. I still love the power, like you said. At Wake Forest, his numbers looked good. So all I can assume is, hey, now that you've transitioned to Wood, your BABIP just sucks. You may not have that exit velocity that we see from Ellie or some of these top players that allows their batting average to automatically grow higher because they just hit the ball so hard, so consistently. But again, he got hit in the face. I think 2026 will really be the test. Does he improve? Does he continue to develop? Or is he kind of just that Max Muncy Rhys Hoskins? I do think there's a buy low opportunity though, because it's been a number of years since the draft. And again, only a couple years, but he isn't what people expected him to be. The power is there. The OBP is there. All we're really looking for is the average not to just suck. And I think he does end up as a starter because I think he's the closest out of all of these guys other than Adams to get a shot if need be.
yeah. Number 6 on the list is Braylon Payne, who you just mentioned, former first rounder, outfielder. I really got this guy on my radar from Welsh because Welsh was saying that he saw him last year, super electric. He is. I mean, like, this is another guy who's like almost. I kind of have him in the same category as Batonti, very similar. A lot of power. I think the speed is actually real though. Like it, I mean, it definitely is real, unlike Batonti's, which may not be. Which is why I have Braylon Payne in my top 150. He's my 149 prospect. Hit tool, I give him a 25 out of 40 grade on. Plate approach, 40 out of 55, because there have been times where he can take walks. Power of 40 out of 55. He hasn't really gotten into the power yet, but he's hit up to 110 max EVs before. And then the speed, I threw a 70 out of 70 on. So super interesting name, Braylon Payne. How do you feel about Braylon Payne?
I think there's a potential superstar here, and it all comes into the development. He was drafted young, if I'm correct. When the Brewers took him, he was 17 years old, and it was known as this is a developmental pick because you're banking on the athleticism. But I mean, the power is what's interesting. I mean, he's, from a stature perspective, he's still like a smaller dude, but the pop is just outrageous when he gets into it. It's just his swing isn't maximized for power because of the speed. He was a hit the ball on the ground, get to first base, try to find some gaps if you can just, square up the ball properly. So why I think there's a potential superstar is as he continues to get older and develop the body itself, like, what does the organization want him to lean in on? Do they want him to lean on that speed, or they want him to be a whole package? Get a little bit bigger, lean into the power, maybe make some adjustments with that swing. And I'm going to be watching his ground ball rates over the next couple of years. Up and down 2025. Had a strong start, if I remember correctly, and then a really bad middle, and then an okay finish. That's a developmental player. But I do think from a speed defense perspective, Milwaukee at least drafted a 4th outfielder here. at its absolute worst. And I think this could be a superstar if developed properly, and I trust the organization. I do think it'll take some time. I wouldn't expect for him to be up at 20, 21. He's not going to be a fast riser like that, because they need to figure out exactly what game they want him to play with.
Yeah, I comped him to Lawrence Butler for a reason.
Great comp. I love that
Yeah.
comp. That is really good.
Yeah. So next on the list is number 5, Cooper Pratt. So Cooper Pratt comes in as my 106th overall prospect. I think Pratt has just been kind of like, to me, he's been like disappointing because he hasn't really done anything fun. Like, I think he's gonna be good, right? But he's almost in this like Colt Emerson of last year kind of window where it's like, okay, like we see some things here that we like. He hits the ball hard, but he's not hitting into power. He's a big dude, but like he's like not really getting there. Like you see 96 power if you're watching on YouTube or X, 101 hit, 113 discipline, 112 speed, 151 age adjusted WRC plus is what we need to remember. This kid is at 22 or 21 years old at AA. So next year he'll probably be a 22-year-old at AAA. So he is still young for the level. Yeah, he's not really doing like the power speedy things we want in a fantasy profile, but he has a really good plate approach, 13% walk, 15.5 K rate. The contact rates are good enough. So like there's not like terrible contact here. You can see 80% contact rate against righties, 72 against lefties. So decent contact rates, 78 overall. It's just kind of like, is he going to actually develop the power that a 6'3", 206-pound kid should actually get into? Like that's the biggest question. Because we have seen sometimes these guys just never get to power, right? So like, do you really want like Nolan Shanuel at shortstop? Like, because that's kind of like what he's looking at like right now. But I mean, the thing is that the power is just, it's still in there. It's just like, will he ever tap into it?
Yeah, and it's interesting you say this. So I have a few pieces of thought. What I'll start with is I am just starting to build this into my own philosophy, and what that is drafted age. So if I'm correct, Pratt was taken at 18 in the 6th round, signed over slot, but he has an August 18th birthday, so he turned 19 that draft year. No big deal, but he was already physically developed at that time. Your hope was, okay, you're going to get into the power, as you mentioned. Well, what I'm saying essentially is I'm very mindful now in FYPD of drafting these guys that are already going to be 19 as they're starting their first professional season. Why? I just feel as though there's a less to dream on. And I've seen enough of these guys, especially not first round, non-bust talents. And that's funny because that's, not necessarily the case. First rounders do bust as well, but you have more confidence in them. I see them develop slowly is what I'm getting to. And I want to build more of a data model on that of like, what is the return based off prep, drafted age, and then development. But Pratt has added some weight, which is good. But when you look at his swing, and this is the second piece to Pratt's profile that I think is interesting, and you go and you watch the video, it's not a violent swing. It's a very conservative approach swing. And it's like when you're 6'3", trending towards 210, maybe even 215 or 220, you got to lean into your body type and you got to allow your natural gifts to play. So I'm curious if he stays at shorter, if he gets moved to third, and if the organization encourages him to attack the ball with more violence. I think if we see that, we're going to see these power numbers start to jump, but it has to be like a decisive mental decision to enter into that kind of a profile, as opposed to you're a shortstop that potentially trends out at a 15, 20, or maybe at your best a 2020 guy. We can't even say 2020 at this point because the power has just not come. And on tape, it doesn't appear as though it will.
Yeah, for sure. That is the concern. I mean, his EVs that we have recorded is like barely over 100. So they're just not great. So number 4 is Jeferson Quero, who could maybe, I don't know, break camp. Like, do you think backup catcher or something like that? I would assume. So he's close. He's on the precipice. And I actually flip-flopped Quero and Cooper Pratt when I was doing my full ranking. So I've got Jeferson Quero at 111. They're pretty close, though. So not the end of the world here. But I like Quero as a really well-rounded catcher. Like I threw a 55 out of 60 on the hit for him. I think he can get to a plus hit tool. 55 on the plate approach, 45 out of 55 on the power, no catcher is really going to run. So speed 35 out of 35, like not really anything crazy there. But I'm pretty interested in Quero for like proximity reasons, and also because I feel like the hit tool is just so sound that like he's going to be one of these catchers that if he gets enough playing time, and if you're playing in like 2 catcher leagues or really deep leagues, there's going to be a ton of value here. Is he ever going to be the best catcher in the league? I don't think so. But is he going to be good and like not poop all over your team like some catchers do? Yeah, I think that's what he's going to do. 102 power, 108 hit, 104 discipline. So these are good F scores, and he's always been young for the level. I mean, he missed a whole year and he's still young for the level. Like 80% contact rate, 88% zone contact rate. These are great numbers. Air pull's all right, sweet spot's all right. Like you'd like to see him barrel more and maybe hit the ball a little bit harder, more consistently, because the max EV is okay, but the average and the 90th aren't great. But I think he can get there. Like he was hitting close to 20, or like at least like specking out for 20 bombs pre-injury. So I think that coming back for another year after recovery is only going to help him. So I'm a big Quero guy. I think he can hit 270 with 15 to 20 home runs in his peak seasons. So
Yeah, I think everything you said is accurate, and I hope as a fan to see him in 2026 because again, decisions have to be made from the organization. Do you sign Contreras? Do you sign Terang? I think the organization only has money to sign one of them. They are both arguably organizational leaders. If you bring Quero up, and he at least performs moderately in his first rookie season, well, Contreras did the same thing with Atlanta. Contreras was also known as a guy that wasn't the best catcher. Milwaukee developed him into the catcher he is today. That is my only concern in 2026 is it does take time to learn how to be a catcher per organization, what that organization prefers, how they go through their process. It helps to have been in their organizational depth system as well. So that's a plus. But I think he should be in a backup role this year. Maybe see 50 games, how they want to spread that out between DH, first base, Contreras moving around as well. Like 50 games is pretty good for a backup. Keeps Contreras healthy. But I think his output will determine what happens with Contreras. That's why I brought up him and Terang. If they feel as though they can get Quero with, hey, he can be 80% or 90% of what Contreras has been for us, of course we're not going to spend $180 million on a catcher who will decline. We'll move off Contreras, we'll sign Terang. Marco also can come up and maybe split time with you. But having 2 catchers, which I think are major league catchers, is really beneficial when you're trying to make a financial commitment to one of your star players.
Yeah, I agree. Number 3 is Logan Henderson. So Logan Henderson, hopefully we see more of him this year. Like I was actually really surprised the way that they handled him last year. Kind of interesting stuff. I had him in like a 20-team league, and I thought as soon as he got the call, I was like, oh, I'm a genius. And then they just like moved him up and down and up and down, and it was very inconsistent for the whole year. Kind of unfortunately made him difficult to own. But I'm a big Logan Henderson fan. Love the even though he's fastball changeup, this is like the one thing that everyone doesn't like is that everyone thinks he's going to be Chris Paddock Jr. just because he's a fastball changeup guy. But he has a really good command of his pitches, a 117 F score on F control. So let me pull up the F scores right here for Logan Henderson. 108 stuff, 102 FERA. And we see here fastball through 52% of the time in the majors, changeup 28% of the time. See the movement on this changeup? 10.9 inches of horizontal movement is ridiculous. So 16% swinging strike rate, 16.3 on the fastball. And then this is something that people forget about is like these other pitches are not that bad. This cutter at a 10.3% swinging strike rate, that's okay for a cutter. Fastballs generally tend to get less swinging strikes than other pitches. And if his four-seamer is going to generate 16.3 and you're only throwing this cutter 10% of the time at a 10% swinging strike rate, that's fine. He's just using it as a bridge pitch because you can't just throw only elite pitches. You need other pitches to throw hitters off the scent. Not everyone's pitch is going to be a 60 or 70 grade pitch. And this slider, 13.3% swinging strike rate, while it's subpar, yeah, it's subpar, but it's not amazing. It's not bad. So like out of this arsenal, like I give him a 65 on the fastball, a 60 out of 70 on the changeup, 45 out of 55 on the cutter, and a 35 out of 40 on the slider with 60 grade command, 289 JA ERA. This is a really good pitcher. I don't care that he's only 6 foot. And we've seen 3 or 4 pitchers now in this organization that are short. And guess what? If the Brewers think that they can get discounts on players when they draft them because they're short, and then they can still develop them into very good pitchers, that's just something that the Brewers are doing very, very well that other teams can't do. And that's good for them if they can do that. So if they don't care, like the Brewers are one org that does not care about pitching height, and it doesn't seem to matter because all these guys end up being good.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Like when we look at these names on this list outside of Letson, like that's kind of the trend that we're going in, right? And I think back to when they took Mizorowski, it was an interesting pick. The stuff jumped off the page, and that's kind of why they took him, was like, how can you not pick this guy at this point, even if he flames out, because there's just so much to like. But everybody else is a specific trend, which is stuff doesn't necessarily jump off the plate. Location is good. And Henderson really showed that this season, like at the major league level, executing the game plan. Again, I've said that a lot today because that's what this organization wants you to do. They want you to go out and follow the game plan because it usually leads to wins. Again, that is shown in the standings. And he just was able to do that as a rookie really, really well. I didn't love how they used him either. And I definitely have some concerns over the flexor strain that he had in August. But the height isn't so much of a concern because of, again, the organization and the game plan. I think the K9 and the whiff rate overall will drop a little bit in 2026. I don't see him as an 11.7 strikeouts per 9 guy. I see him more as a 9 or a 10. But if he's following the game plan and he's utilizing all those pitches to his advantage, he might just be a guy that outperforms for strikeouts what his stuff really is. And I think Milwaukee has an SP4 in the short, like the interim, and an SP3 long term if he can continue to just perform at the major league level how the organization has planned him to.
Yeah, I think so too. I like him a lot. Interesting player. Number 2 is Luis Pena. This is a dude I love. I've got Luis Pena ranked number 11 in my updated prospect rankings. So I'm a big Pena guy. Maybe not as high as Ross. He might be the only guy higher than me. I don't really know. But I'm going to pull up his F scores right here. This will explain why I like him so much in a second. But I put a 55 out of 65 on the hit tool for him. His hit tool did get worse as he went up levels this year, interestingly. Plate approach 50 out of 55, power 50 out of 60, speed 60 out of 65. So those are what I put on the on his hitter grades as I'm pulling up the F scores at the same time. Comp that I threw on him. Tell me if you like this one. Righty only Francisco Lindor mechanics meets a light Jose Ramirez skill set. I know it's a mouthful and it's very Cleveland Guardians centric, but I think that's what you got in Pena.
I don't know what to think, and it's only because of that like really rough stretch at high A in 2025. I loved everything until we got to that point, and it was like, oh, what happened, right? And because I don't have bat speed metrics, when I watch him, and I have watched him a lot, because how can you not with him and Made and a number of these guys we've talked about all at the same level throughout most of the season in 2025, like his ability at the plate to impact the ball and have extreme contact was present on the film. Like we don't need the metrics for that. Like in the batter's box, he looks professional. The question I really have is, like, we've seen some balls absolutely fly off his bat with violence. So what does that power look like? And that's kind of why I like the Jose Ramirez little comp you threw in there, because it's like, I think there's a lot of power that could come from Pena as he continues to develop. My question is, and this is what's interesting with Pena's like profile as a hitter, take the speed out of it. Luis Urias was a really interesting prospect, a decade ago now, and just never grew into any extra power and didn't have speed. So he didn't fit in the modern game. So when I look at Pena, the risk is automatically minimized for Luis Urias, because Pena has that plus speed. Contact and speed is always going to get you to the major league, and it's always going to usually at least allow you to be a starter, or at worst a strong utility player. If he adds 20 home run upside, we're talking about another all-star. Can he add Jose Ramirez power? Well, now you're talking about, a generational positional player. I really love Pena. I like Made more, so I agree with your rankings. I mean, just looking at your F scores, it's like This kid is already looking like a mega prospect, and I think he's still only 18 or 19 years old. 18, yeah.
Yeah. So he actually just turned 19.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but obviously, like anyone who sees a 44 steal season, that's going to catch your attention. But really, what really does it is the contact rates on top of that, and then there's hidden power here. So one thing to keep in mind too is he only played in 96 games. So if you're doing counting stat stuff, like of course some of those are going to be down because he didn't play full season. Most minor leaguers are playing like 120, 130. So he did have an injury mixed in there. This is very interesting to me. This dude completely destroys lefties. 337, 378, 614 slash with 5 of his 9 bombs against lefties. So he had 5 of his 9 home runs in 90 plate appearances against lefties, 4 and 327 against righties. So a lot of that power is coming against lefties. So just keep that in mind for future. Let's see if that is consistent for next year as he's moving up the levels. I assume he'll probably, based on like not being as good at high A, repeat high A a little bit before he gets the call automatically to double A. But the Brewers can be pretty aggressive with some of these guys sometimes. So maybe not. You know, like didn't Jackson Churio, did he even play triple A? Didn't he go straight from double A to the majors?
I think so. And I think there's another unique piece of this, which is, do they want Pena and Mate to be together, right? I think about organizations and how they pair some of these kids up. And in recent Brewers history, everyone remembers Fielder, Weeks, JJ Hardy, right? Like they came up together. Almost each level they were paired together because they were going to be the core foundation of the organization for 6-7 years. So I expect the organization to actually keep them together. And I think Made will probably start at double A. I wouldn't mind if you threw him in high A for April. It's a tough month for any minor leaguer. Get him comfortable, then push him up into double A. But again, terrible stretch at high A. I don't know what to make of it. It's so against his profile. I have to think there was a lingering injury, long season. Something has to go into the equation when you look at that K rate and say like, oh, that just doesn't make sense. So I'm going to wash that and we'll see what 2026 is. I'm not going to let that impact my overall view of Pena.
Yep. Number 1 on the list and my number 7 prospect overall is Jesus Mate. Switch hitting shortstop. Actually made it to double A as an 18-year-old. So played an A-ball, high A, double A. Good contact rates throughout, 78% contact rates till he got to double A. Small sample size, 20 plate appearances. So really hard to say anything about that little sample size there. But Mate is kind of like Pena. He like threw up a lot of steals, didn't throw up as much power home run wise. But the thing is, like, he has good EVs. So at least like what we have on record for him. So like, for instance, let me bring it up here. Because we do have DSL EVs from him, or at least recorded from DSL. 90th percentile of 103.9, max EV of 111. So he has at least like average to above average EVs, and that's as an 18-year-old or 17. If it came from when he was in Dominican Summer League, it came when he was 17. So that's, like major league average now as a 17-year-old. Pretty phenomenal. So Mate, you would like to see him maybe be a little more consistent on the base pass. 78% stolen base rate is okay. Like it's not like you're not going to send him at that. Like usually you want to see over 80 though for guys that you're going to send a lot. So maybe he settles in more as like a 20-30 profile instead of like a 40 or 50 steal guy when he comes to the majors. But grades, I threw 55 out of 65 on the hit, 55 out of 60 on the plate approach, 50 out of 60 on the power, 60 out of 65 on the speed. So he's pluses to above pluses all the way around as a switch hitter, like a true switch hitter. So we can see the splits here. This is one of the things that I always talk about when I talk about Mate, because this guy is a real switch hitter. Look at this. Against righties, 286, 384, 14 slash. Against lefties, 292, 387, 427 slash. Like basically identical slash lines, lefty or righty. Like you never see that. You always see with switch hitters, there's like one good side and then one that's like barely passable side as a switch hitter. Yeah, but he's like great on both sides of the ball. So Mate, like he might be a number 1 prospect at some point in time, but big fan of Jesus Mate, obviously, as pretty much everyone in the industry is.
Yeah, I love everything you said. And to me, when I'm looking at Mate, he'll be 19 in May. So, younger, I think almost by half a year than Pena. And this will be a really interesting test for us as prospectors. We all fell in love with Connor Griffin in 2025, and rightfully so, I think. Numbers jumped off the page. Speed was outrageous. Contact was above what we thought it was. You could see the power projections. Well, Jesus Mate's 2026 should really be what Griffin had in 2025. That's where the age lines up. Mate's a year younger than Griffin. So what we could see from Mate if he starts in high A or if he starts in double A and he just tears the cover off the ball should be almost more excitement than what Connor Griffin got this year because, again, he's younger. I think that'll be a fascinating comparison when we look back on 2026 and what Mate does, if he can continue this prospect deliverance that we've been seeing so far since the DSL. And you threw a Lindor out there a little bit for Pena. Like, I can't really give Mate a comp other than Lindor. Switch hitter, profiles that has the ability to deliver on both sides of the plate. Defense, I don't know yet. I haven't watched enough of his game film to really say, hey, that's absolutely a major league shortstop. But that's at least what we've been hearing is he's good enough to stick. And in 2026 will also really depend on, in regards to where he's going to be in 2027, is that output. I really want the Brewers to be patient with him, whereas Jackson Chourio, they rushed. And we've seen Jackson Chourio put up great numbers in the postseason, but, he is still developing as a hitter in the regular season. It's kind of up and down. The longer you give Mate and Pena, for that matter, I think the better they will be day one at the major leagues, which is important to Milwaukee because every game they're counting dollars and cents for when they have to either trade you or extend you. And, Pena just having so much ability from both sides of the plate, I expect him to fight for that number one overall prospect end of 2026. So the question is, who puts up better numbers in 2026? Griffin, Mate? It's going to be fascinating and enjoyable to watch if Griffin isn't promoted on day one.
Yeah, well, I'll give you my comp for Mate. It's Christian Yelich as a shortstop. Switching Christian Yelich as a shortstop. So that's Jesus
we will
Mate
take
for
that.
you.
A healthy
Yeah.
back, we're good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, healthy Yelich. So that's your number one prospect in the Brewers, or a great organization with the Brewers. What do you have going on, Matt? You got anything to pump right now?
No, we're in the heat of dynasty management. And I think, as we get closer into and post drafts, we'll probably rip a couple episodes, but Doc and I are busy. So the Dynasty Dingers is can we record TBD basis? This year, I think we're going to try to get more into, you and I talked off air. We talked more about just posting our generalizations on fields because we don't have the F scores like you do. Doc and I are more, what do we see? What does the box score tell us? Trust our gut. And we're pretty good at that. It's a very dangerous game to play, but that's who we are. And I think we need to both be a little better this season about ripping out some of those opinions. And I love everything you put together on here because your list is very in line with just the feel I have of some of these players as well. And I think it's interesting when you look at the data, driven individual that classifies rankings, and then also pair that with just the generalized, how does the film look? How does the body move? What can I project from knowing other body types and players at that level? It's actually closer than I think a lot of us like to admit.
Yeah, for sure. Make sure you give Matt a follow on X, Matt_E_Morris. And then also make sure that you subscribe to MLB Data Warehouse so you can play with all these tools that I've been showing during the YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube or X, you can check out all the F scores. They're going to be updated live. I had someone ask me, this is a good question. Someone asked me, Tim, I can buy your prospect package and not subscribe to MLB Data Warehouse, correct? The answer is yes. John's going to hate that I said that, but the answer is yes. However, you're getting two different things. The prospect package is going to be a draft cheat sheet where you're going to get my redraft rankings with all the F scores. You're going to get the 3-year dynasty rankings with all the F scores and my 5-year dynasty rankings with all the F scores and all my prospect rankings. So you're going to be getting all these things, but it's a one-time purchase. If you have MLB Data Warehouse, you're going to be able to play with these things in season and get the F scores as they're updated live in season. It's not a one-time draft thing. So that if you want to get on top of hot guys before anyone else in your league and get on your ads and stuff like that before other people, this is MLB fantasy baseball is not just the draft. So if you want draft help, then I recommend the prospect package because those sheets are going to be really easy to use and really help you organize your draft. But if you want in-season tools, you're going to have to subscribe to MLB Data Warehouse. So my answer, do both. do both. So go buy my prospect package so that my wife lets me keep doing this stuff, and then go subscribe to MLB Data Warehouse so John's wife lets him keep doing that stuff. And then that's the podcast. Follow on X at Fantasy Aceball. We will see you next time. Peace out, everybody, and thank you, Matt, for joining.
Yeah, Tim. Thanks. Appreciate you.